I still remember the exact moment my sister Ashley destroyed my wedding. Standing in her maid of honor dress, she clinked her glass during our vows and announced her pregnancy, stealing every ounce of attention. The room erupted in chaos while I stood frozen in my white dress, tears streaming down my face. I never thought I could forgive such betrayal from my own blood. But exactly 1 year later, at her own wedding, as I stood up to give my speech, the look on her face told me everything. She knew what was coming. What she never expected was the lesson we both learned that changed our relationship forever. Growing up, Ashley was always my little shadow. 3 years younger, she followed me everywhere, wearing my hand-me-downs with pride and asking me to help with her math homework every night at our kitchen table. I remember braiding her hair before school and teaching her how to ride a bike on our quiet suburban street in Pennsylvania. Back then, I never minded being the big sister. I felt proud when Mom and Dad praised me for looking after her. "Candice, you always take such good care of your sister," Mom would say, squeezing my shoulder. "Ashley is lucky to have you." But as we got older, things began to shift between us. Mom and Dad expected me to be the responsible one, the one who never made mistakes. "Why can't you be more like Candice?" they would ask Ashley when she brought home a bad grade or missed curfew. I could see the resentment building in her eyes each time they compared us. By the time I reached high school, Ashley had developed a troubling pattern. Whenever I achieved something, she found a way to steal the spotlight. During my high school graduation ceremony, when my name was called to receive honors, Ashley suddenly fell out of her seat, claiming to feel faint from the heat. My parents rushed to her side, missing my moment on stage entirely. Later, when the celebration was supposed to be about my college acceptance to Penn State, Ashley announced she had been selected for a prestigious summer program, despite it being a routine program most students in her grade attended. I loved my sister deeply, but struggled with the constant competition she created. "It's just how sisters are," my mom would dismiss whenever I tried to address it. "She looks up to you." When I started my job at a marketing firm in Philadelphia after college, I finally felt like I had space to breathe, to build a life that wasn't entangled with Ashley's. That's where I met Ryan. He worked in the graphic design department, and we connected during a project for a major client. Ryan was everything I had ever wanted: kind, thoughtful, creative, and he made me laugh until my sides hurt. Over coffee breaks that turned into lunch dates, that turned into dinner, we fell in love. After 2 years together, our relationship had grown into something beautiful and secure. During this time, Ashley was perpetually single, jumping from short relationship to short relationship. Each time I mentioned Ryan during family dinners, I could see her eyes narrow slightly, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. "He sounds too good to be true," she would say, a subtle edge to her voice. 6 months into my relationship with Ryan, we were having dinner with my family when Ashley made an odd comment. "Remember when we ran into each other at that coffee shop downtown last year, Ryan, before you and Candice got together?" Ryan looked confused. "I don't think we met before Candice introduced us." Ashley laughed it off, saying she must have been thinking of someone else. But something about the interaction bothered me. Later that night, as Ryan and I drove home, I asked him about it. "There is something I should probably tell you," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Ashley actually contacted me on social media before you and I met. She messaged me after seeing my work featured on the company website. She asked me out for coffee to discuss design opportunities, but it felt like she was asking me on a date. I politely declined since I wasn't interested." My hands went cold as he continued. "When I met you months later, I had no idea you were related, until you mentioned your sister's name. By then we were already falling for each other, and I didn't want to make things awkward." I sat in silence, processing this revelation. My own sister had tried to date my boyfriend before he was my boyfriend, and she had never mentioned it to me, even as she watched our relationship develop. It wasn't just competition anymore. It felt like a deliberate attempt to take something of mine. But the worst part was knowing she had sat through countless family dinners listening to me talk about Ryan, all while harboring this secret. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," Ryan said, reaching for my hand. "I didn't want it to come between you and your sister." But it already had. Ashley had drawn a line, one that would only grow deeper as time went on. When Ryan proposed on a crisp fall evening in Fairmount Park, surrounded by autumn leaves and twinkling lights he had secretly arranged, I was overjoyed. He had designed the ring himself, a vintage-inspired emerald surrounded by small diamonds that caught the light in a way that made me gasp. The moment was perfect, intimate, and completely ours. Until I shared the news with my family. Ashley squealed the loudest, hugging me tight and demanding to see the ring. But I noticed how quickly she turned the conversation to herself. "I always thought I would get engaged first," she said, laughing as though it were a joke. "But I guess some things are worth waiting for." 2 days later, she called me with unexpected enthusiasm. "I want to help you plan everything," she insisted. "Let me be your wedding planning partner. After all, who knows you better than your sister?" Despite my hesitation, I agreed. Maybe this was Ashley's way of supporting me, of showing that she had matured beyond our childhood rivalry. I wanted to believe in this possibility more than anything. Since I was 28, I had been saving for my dream wedding. I had a detailed vision board hidden in my closet, filled with images of garden ceremonies, blush and ivory flowers and twinkling string lights. I had researched venues across Pennsylvania, and finally settled on a historic estate with gardens that bloomed magnificently in early summer. I shared all of these dreams with Ashley, who nodded enthusiastically and promised to help make them come true. The first signs of trouble came when Ashley lost the contract for the garden venue I had been dreaming of. "I put it in my special folder, but it's just gone," she said, sounding genuinely distressed. By the time we called the venue again, they had booked another wedding for our date. Instead, Ashley had already taken initiative and put a deposit on a modern hotel ballroom that couldn't have been further from my vision. "But it's so much more practical," she insisted when she saw my face fall. "What if it rains? The garden would be a disaster." I swallowed my disappointment and tried to make the best of it. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table as we toured the hotel space, whispering, "We can make any place special as long as we're together." As the months passed, Ashley's help became increasingly problematic. She consistently forgot appointments with florists and caterers that aligned with my vision, only to remember appointments with vendors who matched her very different taste. The blush and ivory color scheme I wanted somehow morphed into deep purples and silvers that Ashley insisted photographed better. The delicate garden-inspired cake design was replaced with a 7-tier monstrosity that cost nearly twice my budget. "Ashley, this isn't what I wanted," I finally said one afternoon after discovering she had canceled my appointment with the string quartet and booked a DJ instead. "I'm just trying to help," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought I was taking stress off your plate. You're so busy with work and I have all this free time. I just wanted to be a good sister." Her tears made me second-guess myself. Was I being ungrateful, bridezilla-ish? I apologized and tried to be more appreciative of her efforts, even as I felt my dream wedding slipping through my fingers. 3 weeks before the wedding, Ashley organized my bachelorette party. Rather than the wine country weekend I had mentioned wanting, she planned a night of bar hopping that culminated in her getting dramatically drunk and telling my college friends and coworkers embarrassing stories about my awkward teenage years. "Remember when Candice got her braces stuck on her sweater during her first kiss with Tommy Wilson?" she slurred, while my friends looked uncomfortable. "Or when she got her period during swim practice, and everyone could tell because of her white swimsuit." I pulled her aside, asking her to stop. "Why are you doing this?" Doing what she asked, her eyes wide with false innocence. "These are funny stories. Everyone tells embarrassing stories at bachelorette parties." By the end of the night, I was in tears in the bathroom of the last bar, with my best friend Jenny rubbing my back. "Why is she being like this?" I sobbed. "It's like she can't stand for me to be happy." "You should cut her from the wedding party," Jenny said firmly. "She's been sabotaging everything from day one. Find another maid of honor." But despite everyone's advice, Ryan, Jenny, even my cousins, I couldn't bring myself to exclude my sister from my wedding. Whatever her flaws, whatever pain she caused me, she was still my sister. I still remembered the little girl who had looked up to me, who had crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. I believed, perhaps foolishly, that deep down she still loved me. 3 days before the wedding, I stopped by Ryan's apartment to drop off his wedding gift, a custom watch with our wedding date engraved on the back. He wasn't home, but his roommate let me in to leave it on his dresser. As I placed the box down, I noticed a text notification pop up on Ryan's tablet that was charging nearby. It was from his friend Jake. Need your advice about Ashley. Things are getting serious, but it's complicated with her being your future SIL. I froze, staring at the message. Jake and Ashley. Since when I knew Jake well, he was going to be one of Ryan's groomsmen. He had been at numerous dinners and gatherings with us over the past year. How could Ashley be dating him, without anyone knowing? When I confronted Ryan about it that evening, he was equally shocked. Jake never said a word to me about dating Ashley. I had no idea. I called Ashley immediately. Why didn't you tell me you're seeing Jake? There was a long pause before she answered. I didn't want to make things weird for your wedding. We've been keeping it quiet until after your big day. It's only been a few months. A few months, I repeated. You've been planning my wedding with me for 8 months, Ashley. You've had countless opportunities to mention this. Jake is one of Ryan's best friends. He's in our wedding party. Exactly, she said, her voice hardening. It was always about your wedding. I didn't want to complicate things or have you think I was trying to steal attention. But that's exactly what it felt like. Another secret, another way for Ashley to insert herself into my life, my relationship, my special day. The fact that she had hidden this relationship for months, even as she helped plan seating charts and wedding party photographs, felt like a betrayal I couldn't fully articulate. Little did I know this was only the beginning of what would become the most painful day of my life. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and bright, the late June sun streaming through the windows of the hotel suite where my bridesmaids and I were getting ready. Despite all the planning disasters, despite the venue not being what I had dreamed of, I felt a surge of happiness. In just a few hours I would be married to Ryan, and that was what truly mattered. Ashley was unusually quiet as the makeup artist worked on her face. She had been subdued since I confronted her about dating Jake, responding to questions with one-word answers and avoiding eye contact. Everything okay? I asked her, as the stylist pinned up her hair. Fine, she said, offering a tight smile. Just nervous for my speech, I guess. I reached over and squeezed her hand. You'll be great. And thank you for everything, Ashley. Despite our ups and downs, I'm so glad you're standing with me today. She nodded, blinking rapidly. I thought I saw tears in her eyes and assumed they were happy tears. How wrong I was. The ceremony was set for 4 o'clock. As my father walked me down the aisle, I saw Ryan waiting for me, his eyes filled with love. The hotel ballroom had been transformed with draping and soft lighting, making it almost magical. In that moment, I forgot all about the garden venue I had wanted. This was perfect because Ryan was there. We had written our own vows. Ryan went first, his voice steady as he promised to support my dreams, to be my partner in all things, to love me through whatever life brought our way. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I listened, overwhelmed by the depth of his love. Then it was my turn. I unfolded my paper, took a deep breath, and began. Ryan, from the moment you spilled coffee on my presentation notes and then stayed up all night helping me recreate them, I knew you were someone special. Someone who would always be there when it mattered most. I was interrupted by the sound of glass clinking. Ashley had picked up a champagne glass from the nearby ceremonial table and was tapping it with a spoon. All heads turned toward her, including mine. She was swaying slightly, her face flushed. I'm sorry, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. I know this isn't traditional, but I need to say something before they finish their vows. The officiant looked bewildered. My father half rose from his seat, then sat back down, clearly unsure how to handle this breach of protocol. Ryan's hand tightened around mine. Ashley, I whispered urgently, what are you doing? She ignored me, addressing the gathered guests instead. I want to congratulate my sister and Ryan, she began, her words slightly slurred. But I also have an announcement of my own. Jake and I, she gestured toward the groomsmen, where Jake stood frozen in horror, are expecting a baby. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Jake's face had gone completely white. Ryan's parents exchanged glances of disapproval. My mother had her hand over her mouth. Ashley wasn't finished. We've created life, she continued, placing her hand on her stomach dramatically. While Candice and Ryan are just signing papers today, Jake and I are bringing a whole new person into the world. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt around me. Ryan's arm went around my waist, supporting me as my knees threatened to buckle. "Ashley, that's enough." My father finally stood up, his voice sharp. "Sit down right now." But the damage was done. The sacred atmosphere of our ceremony had been shattered. Even after Ashley was led back to her seat, her eyes gleaming with what looked disturbingly like satisfaction, we couldn't recapture the magic of the moment. My hands shook so badly that I could barely read my vows. The officiant rushed through the rest of the ceremony, clearly sensing the tension that now filled the room. When he pronounced us husband and wife, the applause felt muted, uncomfortable. What should have been the happiest moment of my life had been irreparably tarnished. The reception that followed was awkward at best. Instead of celebrating our marriage, guests were huddled in corners whispering about Ashley's announcement. Jake spent most of the evening avoiding Ashley, looking shell-shocked. Several of Ryan's relatives left early, murmuring excuses about long drives home. I moved through the evening in a daze, going through the motions of our first dance, the cake cutting, the bouquet toss. Ryan held me close during our dance, whispering, "I'm so sorry this happened. I love you so much. We'll get through this." I nodded against his chest, trying to believe him, but inside I felt hollow. The beautiful wedding album I had imagined would now be forever associated with my sister's dramatic announcement. Every time someone mentioned our wedding day in the future, this story would be part of it. By midnight, when we finally retreated to our hotel suite, I was emotionally exhausted. I sat on the edge of the bed in my wedding dress, too drained to even cry. "She's always been competitive," I told Ryan as he sat beside me, loosening his tie. "But this? I never thought she would go this far." Ryan was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Jake texted me while you were saying goodbye to your cousins. He says there's no way Ashley is pregnant. They've only been together a few times, and he says they've always been careful." I looked up sharply. "What are you saying?" "I think Ryan said slowly that your sister made the whole thing up, just to ruin our wedding." The realization hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to think Ashley had carelessly chosen a terrible moment to share her news. It was entirely another to consider that she had deliberately fabricated a pregnancy announcement with the sole purpose of destroying my wedding day. "I can't believe even she would do something that cruel," I whispered. But deep down, I could believe it. This was just the most extreme version of what Ashley had been doing our entire lives, ensuring that no accomplishment or happy moment of mine could exist without her attempting to overshadow it. As Ryan held me while I finally broke down in tears, I knew that something fundamental had changed between my sister and me. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever fully heal. Ryan and I spent 2 weeks in Hawaii for our honeymoon, deliberately keeping our phones off for most of the trip. The island's beauty helped temporarily distract me from the disaster of our wedding day, but as our return flight landed in Philadelphia, the knot of anxiety in my stomach tightened. We would have to face reality again, and that included facing my family and Ashley. The first family dinner after our return was excruciating. My parents had set their dining room table with their best china, clearly trying to create a pleasant atmosphere for what they must have known would be a difficult reunion. Ashley arrived last, wearing a loose-fitting top that could have been interpreted as hiding a small baby bump. The commitment to her lie was both impressive and disturbing. "How was the honeymoon?" my mother asked, brightly passing a bowl of mashed potatoes. "Beautiful," Ryan answered when I couldn't. "The beaches were incredible." "Ashley has had terrible morning sickness," my mother added, patting Ashley's hand sympathetically. "The doctor says it's a good sign, though. Means the pregnancy is progressing well." I set down, my fork appetite gone. "Has she had an ultrasound?" "Yet?" I asked, looking directly at my sister. "Seen the heartbeat?" Ashley fidgeted with her napkin. "It's still early. That comes at the next appointment." My father cleared his throat. "Candice, I know what happened at the wedding was unfortunate timing. But your sister is going through a lot right now. Try to be understanding." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Unfortunate timing, Dad," she interrupted our vows. She deliberately chose that moment to make her announcement. "I was emotional," Ashley said, tears springing to her eyes on cue. "Hormones. You can't understand unless you've been pregnant." "Be the bigger person," my mother urged, reaching across the table to touch my arm. That's what you've always been good at, sweetheart. Your sister needs your support now. I looked around the table, at my parents' pleading faces, at Ashley's practiced expression of vulnerability, at Ryan's quiet support, and suddenly realized nothing had changed. The same dynamic that had defined our family for decades was still in place. Ashley would act out, and everyone would expect me to accept it, to forgive, to be the bigger person. As adults, the stakes had simply gotten higher. The strain began to affect my marriage. I would wake up at night replaying the wedding in my mind, imagining all the things I should have said or done differently. Ryan would hold me as I cried, assuring me that it didn't matter, that we were together, and that was all that counted. But I could see the worry in his eyes as the weeks passed, and I couldn't seem to move beyond my anger and hurt. 6 weeks after the wedding, Ryan gently suggested therapy. Not because there's anything wrong with how you feel, he clarified. Your anger is completely justified. But you're carrying this around every day, and I hate seeing how much it's hurting you. My first appointment with Dr. Marshall was awkward. I sat stiffly on her comfortable couch, feeling defensive. My sister ruined my wedding deliberately, I stated flatly. I'm angry. That seems normal to me. Dr. Marshall nodded. It is normal, and your anger is valid. But you're here because that anger is affecting your daily life, your new marriage, your happiness. That's what we need to address. Over the following weeks, Dr. Marshall helped me unpack not just the wedding disaster, but the entire history of my relationship with Ashley. During our 4th session, after I had described various incidents from our childhood and adult years, she leaned forward thoughtfully. Based on what you've shared, your sister's behavior shows signs of pathological jealousy, she said, and possibly elements of a personality disorder. Her need to compete with you, to take attention away from your achievements, to insert herself into your relationship. These are not typical sibling rivalry behaviors. So, she can't help it, I asked. Not sure if this information made me feel better or worse. I can't diagnose someone I haven't treated, Dr. Marshall clarified. But whether she can help it or not isn't really the point. The question is, what boundaries do you need to establish to protect your own well-being? Boundaries. The word felt foreign when applied to my family. There had never been boundaries with Ashley. She had always been allowed to cross every line with minimal consequences. But now with Dr. Marshall's guidance, I began to see that I could change that pattern even if no one else in my family did. I started small. I declined a lunch invitation from Ashley, saying I had other plans. I didn't answer every text message immediately. When my mother called to relay some complaint Ashley had about me, I calmly stated, "That's between Ashley and me. She should talk to me directly." 2 months after the wedding, I received an invitation to Ashley's baby shower planned by my mother. The very existence of this event confirmed that my family was fully committed to Ashley's pregnancy lie. I declined the invitation. "But you're her sister," my mother protested over the phone. "She needs you there." "I'm not coming, Mom," I said firmly. "I don't believe Ashley is pregnant, and I won't participate in this charade." There was a long silence before my mother spoke again. "I don't understand why you're being so cruel," she said finally. "Ashley made one mistake at your wedding, and you won't let it go. Pregnancy is difficult enough without family conflict." I felt a familiar wave of guilt followed by anger. At my mother, at Ashley, but mostly at myself, for still being vulnerable to this manipulation. "I love you, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, "but I won't be at the shower. My decision is final." My absence from the shower created a family crisis of unprecedented proportions. My father called, then my aunts, then my cousins, all urging me to reconcile with Ashley, to support her during this difficult time. I held firm, a newfound strength emerging from my therapy sessions and Ryan's unwavering support. 3 weeks after the shower, my mother insisted on a family dinner to clear the air. Ashley arrived wearing a fitted dress, her stomach conspicuously flat for someone who should have been nearly 4 months pregnant. No one commented on this obvious discrepancy. Halfway through a tense meal of overcooked pot roast, I finally asked the question hanging in the air. "Ashley, how are you feeling? Any more morning sickness?" She glared at me, hearing the challenge in my voice. "It's gotten better." "And how was the last doctor's appointment? Did you find out the gender?" My father set down his fork loudly. Canned ice enough? No, Dad, I think this is important, I insisted. We're all pretending Ashley is expecting a baby. I'd like to know more details about this miracle pregnancy. Ashley suddenly pushed back from the table, tears streaming down her face. Fine. There's no baby. Are you happy now? It was a joke that went too far and everyone took it so seriously. I couldn't figure out how to take it back. The table fell silent. My mother looked stricken. My father closed his eyes briefly as though in pain. A joke, I repeated, my voice shaking. You ruined my wedding day for a joke. Ashley swiped at her tears angrily. You always get everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé. I just wanted one day where people were paying attention to me instead of you. You could have had that on literally any other day of my life, I shouted back. But you chose my wedding. The one day that was supposed to be about Ryan and me. Girls, please? My mother interjected, but neither of us was listening. I'm sorry. Okay, Ashley said, though her tone suggested she was anything but sorry. It was stupid. But you've been punishing me for months now. Isn't that enough? I stood up, unable to remain at the table any longer. There's no punishment that would be enough for what you did, I said quietly. You didn't just ruin an event. You showed me exactly who you are and what you think of me. I walked out of my parents' house that night with Ryan beside me, feeling both hollowed out and somehow lighter. The truth was finally acknowledged, even if Ashley's version of an apology left much to be desired. 3 days later, Ashley called me. I almost didn't answer, but something compelled me to pick up. I have news, she said without preamble. Jake proposed last night. We're getting married in June. I was speechless for a moment. Congratulations, I finally managed. I want you to be my maid of honor, she continued, as though we'd never had a falling out, as though she hadn't fabricated a pregnancy and ruined my wedding. No one else knows me like you do. The irony was so overwhelming I almost laughed. Ashley wanted me to be her maid of honor after what she had done as mine. You don't have to answer right now, she added, when I didn't immediately respond. Just think about it, okay? It would mean so much to me. As I hung up the phone, I wondered if my sister was truly that oblivious to the pain she had caused, or if this was yet another calculated move in a game I was only beginning to understand. For 3 days after Ashley's phone call, I avoided making a decision. Ryan found me one evening staring out our apartment window, lost in thought. You know you don't have to do this, right? He said, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. No one would blame you for saying no. I leaned back against him, grateful for his steady presence. But they would blame me. My parents would see it as me being vindictive, refusing to support her the way she supported me. Who cares what they think, Ryan asked, turning me to face him. The only person you need to answer to is yourself. What do you want to do? That was the question I couldn't answer. Part of me wanted to refuse to give Ashley a taste of her own medicine. But another part, the part that had been conditioned since childhood to be the responsible one, the bigger person, felt obligated to accept. I think I need to talk to Dr. Marshall about this, I said finally. My therapist listened carefully as I explained the situation during our next session. It feels like a trap, I concluded. If I say no, I'm the bad sister who can't forgive. If I say yes, I'm putting myself in position to be hurt again. Those aren't the only 2 options, Dr. Marshall pointed out. You could agree to be in the wedding, but not as maid of honor. You could set clear boundaries about your involvement. The question isn't just whether you participate, but how and on what terms. Her words gave me a new perspective. Perhaps this wasn't a simple yes or no decision. Perhaps I could find a third path, one that preserved my dignity while allowing for the possibility of healing. I called Ashley that evening. I'm willing to be part of your wedding, I told her, but not as your maid of honor. I'll be a bridesmaid. There was a pause before she responded. But I need you to be my maid of honor. You're my sister. I was your sister when you ruined my wedding too. I reminded her, keeping my voice level. This is what I'm comfortable with. Take it or leave it. After some argument, Ashley grudgingly accepted my terms. Fine. But you'll still help with all the planning, right? You know I'm terrible at organizing things. That should have been my first warning. Despite stepping down from the maid of honor role, Ashley soon began treating me as though I had accepted it. Daily texts about venue options, weekly emails with links to dresses and flowers and cakes. As the weeks passed, I realized with growing dismay that I had been drawn into exactly what I had tried to avoid, becoming Ashley's primary wedding planner. "I need your opinion on these centerpieces," she texted one Tuesday morning while I was in an important meeting at work. When I didn't respond immediately, she called 3 times. "What part of 'I'm just a bridesmaid' is unclear to you?" I asked, when I finally called her back during my lunch break. "But you're so good at this stuff," she whined. "And Mom is useless. She keeps suggesting things from the 80s. I sighed, feeling the familiar pattern reasserting itself. "Ashley, I have a full-time job. I can't drop everything whenever you have a wedding question." "You didn't seem too busy when it was your wedding," she shot back. And there it was, the competitive edge that defined our relationship. In Ashley's mind, if I had done something for my wedding, she deserved the same or better, regardless of circumstances. As the months passed, I watched with increasing unease as Ashley's wedding plans grew more and more extravagant. She had chosen the exact garden venue I had originally wanted but been unable to book. Her color scheme was a slightly lighter shade of the blush and ivory I had selected initially. Her dress was from the same designer as mine, but with additional embellishments that made it significantly more expensive. "Don't you think this is a bit much?" I asked during a cake tasting as she selected a 9-tier monstrosity that would cost over $5,000. "How are you affording all this?" "Jake's parents are helping," she said dismissively. "And I've been saving." But I knew my sister's spending habits and salary. The math didn't add up. I feared she was going into substantial debt to outdo my wedding. The breaking point came when Ashley announced her plans for a bachelorette weekend in Las Vegas. "I've booked the presidential suite at the Bellagio," she told me over brunch. 4 nights. The flights are around $800 each. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Ashley, that's outrageous. I can't afford that." "But you're in charge of the bachelorette party," she said, as though this were an established fact. "That's what bridesmaids do. First, that's typically the maid of honor's job, which I'm not. Second, no reasonable person expects their bridal party to spend thousands of dollars on a bachelorette party. Most of your bridesmaids are still paying off student loans." Ashley's face hardened. "If you can't be supportive, just say so. Don't try to ruin this for me." The accusation was so outlandish, I almost laughed. "Ruin this for you? Like you ruined my wedding? Is that what you're worried about?" "I knew you were still holding that over my head," she snapped. "You pretend to be so mature and forgiving, but you're just waiting for a chance to get back at me." I stood up, tossing money on the table for my half of the bill. "I'm not having this conversation again. Figure out a bachelorette party that doesn't require everyone to go into debt or find someone else to plan it." That evening, my cousin Megan called. "Did you and Ashley have a fight about the bachelorette party?" she asked, without preamble. "Sort of," I admitted. "Why?" Megan hesitated. "She's telling everyone that you're trying to sabotage her wedding because you're jealous that hers is going to be nicer than yours was. She said you've been undermining her plans from the beginning." I sat down hard on my couch, the phone nearly slipping from my suddenly numb fingers. "She's saying what?" "I didn't believe it," Megan assured me quickly. "None of the cousins do. We all remember what happened at your wedding. But she's been calling everyone crying about how you're trying to ruin her big day." After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this new level of manipulation. Ashley wasn't just being difficult or demanding. She was actively rewriting history, casting me as the villain in a narrative where she was the innocent victim. When Ryan came home from work, he found me still sitting in the darkened living room. "Candice, what's wrong?" Through tears, I explained what I had learned. Ryan listened, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "I think you need to drop out of the wedding completely," he said when I finished. "This isn't healthy for you." "If I do that, it just confirms her story," I argued. "Everyone will think I really was trying to sabotage her. Who cares what everyone thinks? The people who matter know the truth." But it wasn't that simple. Family stories have power. Narratives once established can be nearly impossible to change. If I walked away now, Ashley's version might become the accepted truth within our family. I went back to Dr. Marshall with my dilemma. It feels like I'm damned if I do, and damned if I don't, I concluded after explaining the situation. What's the worst that could happen if you stepped away from the wedding? She asked. My family would be angry. They might even side with Ashley. And could you handle that? The question gave me pause. Could I? The old Candice would have said no, would have done anything to maintain family harmony, even at great personal cost. But I wasn't that person anymore. Yes, I said slowly. I think I could. It would hurt, but I would survive it. Dr. Marshall smiled. That's growth. You're recognizing that your worth isn't dependent on your family's approval. Now, what's the best that could happen if you stayed in the wedding? I thought about it. Maybe we could find a way to mend our relationship. Maybe Ashley would recognize what she did and genuinely apologize. Is that likely based on her recent behavior? No, I admitted. Not without something changing dramatically. We spent the rest of the session exploring my options, weighing the potential outcomes of various approaches. By the end, I had a clearer sense of how to proceed, not with a simple withdrawal, but with a carefully considered plan that would allow me to maintain my integrity while remaining open to genuine reconciliation, if it became possible. What I didn't know was that the situation was about to be complicated by an unexpected revelation that would force me to reconsider everything I thought I knew about my sister and her upcoming marriage. The revelation came from an unexpected source. Jake's sister Melissa contacted me a week after my session with Dr. Marshall asking if we could meet for coffee. I had only met her a handful of times at family gatherings, so her request surprised me. We met at a quiet cafe near my office. Melissa looked nervous repeatedly, checking her phone and glancing around as though worried someone might see us together. I probably shouldn't be doing this, she began, but I felt you should know. Jake has been having serious doubts about marrying Ashley. I set down my coffee mug carefully. Why are you telling me this? Melissa sighed. Because I'm worried about my brother. He says every time he tries to discuss his concerns with Ashley, she either starts crying or threatens to tell everyone he abandoned her. He feels trapped. What concerns does he have, I asked, though I could guess. He says she's become obsessed with making their wedding perfect, not for them as a couple, but to show everyone else up, especially you. Melissa hesitated. And he accidentally found credit card statements showing she's put over $30,000 of wedding expenses on high-interest cards. He had no idea. I closed my eyes, briefly processing this information. That sounds like Ashley. There's more, Melissa continued. Jake heard Ashley on the phone telling someone that she was finally getting her revenge for what happened between you two. He doesn't know what that means, but it scared him. The phrase sent a chill through me. Revenge for what? For setting boundaries? For not letting her completely take over my life? Or was this still about Ryan, the man she had tried to date first? What does Jake want to do? I asked. He doesn't know. He loves her, or at least he thinks he does, but he's scared of what marriage to her might be like. Melissa reached across the table, touching my hand briefly. I thought if anyone could understand, it would be you. After meeting with Melissa, I found myself in a moral quandary. Should I talk to Jake? Try to warn Ashley that her fiancé was having doubts? Stay completely out of it? None of the options seemed right. I decided to take a step back and focus on what I could control, my own actions and responses. The revelation about Ashley's revenge plans reinforced my need for caution, but I still wasn't ready to completely abandon hope for eventual reconciliation. In my next therapy session, Dr. Marshall helped me develop a plan for the wedding that would allow me to participate with dignity while maintaining strong boundaries. The key, she explained, is to be clear about what you will and won't do and then stick to it consistently, no matter how Ashley reacts. Over the following weeks, I put this plan into action. I attended pre-wedding events but limited my involvement to what would be expected of any bridesmaid. I responded to Ashley's demands with calm, clear statements. I can't do that, but I can do this instead. I didn't rise to her provocations or engage when she tried to pull me into arguments about my lack of support. Surprisingly, this approach seemed to work. Ashley's demands gradually decreased as she realized I wouldn't be manipulated. Our interactions, while not warm, became at least civil. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was going through old family photos for the slideshow Ashley had requested when I discovered a box of home videos in my parents' attic. Curious, I took them home and spent an evening watching footage from our childhood. What I saw both confirmed and complicated my understanding of our relationship. There was indeed a pattern of Ashley's jealousy, moments where her face would darken when attention shifted to me, instances where she deliberately created disruptions during my important moments. But there were also scenes of genuine sisterly affection. Ashley proudly showing off a drawing she had made of the two of us. Ashley crying when I left for college and clinging to me at the door. Ashley defending me fiercely when a neighborhood kid made fun of my braces. The videos revealed a more complex picture than the one I had been carrying. Yes, Ashley had issues with jealousy and attention-seeking, but there was also love there, however. Twisted it had become over the years. I shared this insight with Ryan as we watched one video from Christmas when I was 12 and Ashley was 9. On screen, Ashley was presenting me with a handmade bracelet, her face anxious as she waited for my reaction. "Look how much she wanted your approval," Ryan noted. Even then, I never realized how much my opinion mattered to her, I admitted. I always thought she was competing with me, but maybe she was also trying to impress me. This realization didn't excuse Ashley's behavior, but it helped me see it in a different light. Her desire for attention, her competitive nature, these weren't just about taking things from me. They were also about seeking recognition from me, from our parents, from everyone whose opinion she valued. The night before Ashley's wedding disaster struck, as it often seemed to around my sister, the florist called to say their delivery truck had been in an accident and the wedding flowers were destroyed. Ashley had a complete meltdown, screaming and crying in my parents' living room, while everyone tried to calm her down. "The wedding is ruined," she sobbed. "Everything is ruined." My mother looked helplessly at me, silently pleading for intervention. Against my better judgment, I sat down next to Ashley on the couch. "The wedding isn't ruined," I said firmly. "We have options. We can call other florists for whatever they have available. We can buy flowers from grocery stores and arrange them ourselves. We can use more candles and fewer flowers." Ashley looked up her mascara, streaked down her cheeks. "You would help." "After everything, you're still my sister," I said simply. For the next 3 hours, my mother Ashley and I called every florist within 50 miles. We found one who had just had a cancellation and could provide simple arrangements. Not the elaborate designs Ashley had wanted, but beautiful nonetheless. Crisis averted. As I was preparing to leave, Ashley suddenly caught my arm. "Why did you help me tonight? You could have just let me deal with it myself." I considered my answer carefully, because I remember what it feels like to have wedding plans fall apart, and because despite everything, I don't want you to be unhappy. She studied my face as though looking for hidden motives. "I don't understand you sometimes, Candice." "I know," I replied. "But maybe someday you will." Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. It was Jake. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. "In person. It's important." We met at an all-night diner near my apartment. Jake looked terrible, unshaven with dark circles under his eyes and his hair standing on end as though he'd been repeatedly running his hands through it. "I don't think I can go through with the wedding," he blurted as soon as I sat down. I took a deep breath. "That's a big decision to make the night before, Jake." "I know." He stared down at his untouched coffee. "But the closer we get, the more I realize this isn't right. The way she treats people, the lying, the manipulation. I've been making excuses, telling myself she'll change after we're married. But she won't, will she?" His question hung in the air between us. I could have confirmed his fears, could have told him exactly how unlikely it was that Ashley would change. Part of me, the part still hurt by her betrayal, wanted to do exactly that. But I thought of the home videos of the little girl so desperate for approval of the complicated person my sister had become. "I can't tell you what to do, Jake," I said finally. "But I can tell you that Ashley has deep insecurities that drive her behavior. That doesn't excuse what she does, but it helps explain it. Do you think she can change?" "I think anyone can change if they truly want to, and are willing to do the hard work. The question is whether Ashley wants to." Jake nodded slowly. "I love her. The real her underneath all the drama and competition. I've seen glimpses of that person, and she's amazing. I just don't know if that's enough. We talked for another hour, Jake working through his confusion and fears. I was careful not to push him in either direction, respecting that this was his decision to make. As we prepared to leave, Jake looked at me with newfound respect. "You're a good person, Candice. After what she did to your wedding, most people would have told me to run for the hills. Maybe I've just learned that revenge and resentment hurt me more than they hurt her," I replied. "Whatever you decide, I hope you find peace with it." As I drove home, I realized I had meant every word. Somewhere in the process of setting boundaries, of working through my anger in therapy, of rediscovering the complexity of our shared history, I had begun to let go of my desire for Ashley to suffer as I had suffered. That didn't mean I was ready to forget or to fully trust her again. But it did mean I was ready to stop allowing her actions to control my emotions. With that realization came a sense of clarity about what I needed to do at tomorrow's wedding. Not for Ashley's sake, but for my own. Ashley's wedding day dawned clear and bright, much as mine had a year earlier. When I arrived at the bridal suite in the garden venue, I had once dreamed of Ashley was already in high-stress mode, barking orders at the makeup artist and complaining about the emergency flower arrangements. "Thank God you're here," she said when she saw me. "The hairstylist is doing everything wrong, and my veil has a snag in it. Fix it." In the past, I would have jumped to solve these problems, to smooth things over, to make everything perfect for Ashley. But today, I simply smiled. "The hairstylist is doing a beautiful job," I said calmly. "And I'll look at the veil, but I'm sure it's fine." Ashley gaped at me, clearly expecting my usual accommodating response. When it didn't come, she seemed briefly at a loss. Throughout the morning, I maintained this approach. Supportive but not subservient, helpful but not frantic. I noticed Ashley watching me with confusion, perhaps trying to determine if this was some kind of strategy on my part. "Did you talk to Jake last night?" she asked suddenly, as the makeup artist was working on her eyes. "Yes," I answered honestly. There was no point in lying. "What did he say?" "That's between you and Jake," I replied. "If you want to know what he's thinking, you should ask him." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push further. I wondered if she knew how close Jake had come to calling off the wedding, if they had spoken after our late-night meeting. From the tension in her shoulders and the way she kept checking her phone, I suspected they had. Despite the morning's stress, the ceremony itself was beautiful. The garden venue was breathtaking, with sunlight filtering through ancient oak trees and birds singing in the background. Jake looked nervous, but determined as he waited at the altar. When Ashley walked down the aisle on our father's arm, she was genuinely stunning in her elaborately beaded gown. I stood with the other bridesmaids, feeling a complex mix of emotions: residual hurt, tentative hope, and a strange sense of déjà vu. A year ago, I had been the one standing where Ashley now stood, making vows that had been interrupted in the cruelest way. But there was no interruption today. Jake and Ashley exchanged traditional vows, their voices steady. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the guests erupted in applause. I clapped, too surprised to find that I genuinely hoped they would find happiness together. The reception began with cocktails on the terrace, followed by dinner in a beautifully decorated tent. As the maid of honor delivered a somewhat generic speech, I mentally prepared for my own moment at the microphone. Ashley had insisted that all bridesmaids give short speeches, and I was scheduled to go last. I had written and rewritten my speech dozens of times over the past weeks. After my conversation with Jake, after watching the old family videos, after all the therapy and self-reflection, I had finally settled on what I wanted to say. But now, sitting at the head table watching Ashley and Jake's first dance, I decided to set aside my prepared remarks. When my turn came, I walked to the center of the dance floor, index cards in hand. Ashley's eyes followed me, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. She knew better than anyone what I could say. In this moment, what stories I could tell, what payback I could extract. For those who don't know me, I'm Candice, Ashley's sister. I began setting the cards down on a nearby table without looking at them. I've been thinking a lot about what to say today. About sisterhood, about growth, about the complicated journey that brings us all to this beautiful celebration. I looked directly at Ashley. Growing up with a sister is unlike any other relationship. You share history secrets, clothes, and sometimes rivalry that only siblings can understand. Ashley and I have had our moments, some wonderful, some challenging. A ripple of uncomfortable awareness moved through the guests who had attended my wedding. They knew exactly how challenging things had been. What I've learned over this past year, I continued, is that growth isn't linear. It's messy and difficult, and sometimes painful. But it's also beautiful when it happens. I shared a story from our childhood, one I had rediscovered in the videos, about Ashley standing up to a bully who had made fun of me in 6th grade. She was 9 years old, half his size, but she marched right up to him and said, "Nobody talks to my sister that way." That's the Ashley I've always known was there. Fierce, loyal, and brave when it matters most. Ashley's eyes had filled with tears. She remembered that day too, I could tell. Every family has its complicated dynamics, its patterns that can either bind us together or pull us apart. The choice we make, to hold on to hurt or to find a path toward healing, defines who we become. I raised my glass. Today I choose to celebrate the beginning of a new chapter for Ashley and Jake as they build their life together. And perhaps for our family as well, as we learn that love doesn't mean perfection. It means continuing to show up, to try again, to see the best in each other even when it's hard. Ashley was openly crying now. Jake had his arm around her, his own expression, a mix of surprise and relief. To Ashley and Jake, I concluded, may your marriage be blessed with honesty, growth, and the courage to be vulnerable with each other. And may you always find your way back to love, even on the hardest days. As applause filled the tent, I returned to my seat. I hadn't called Ashley out. I hadn't extracted revenge. But I had spoken my truth, offered a genuine wish for their happiness, and opened a door to the possibility of healing, all while standing firmly in my own integrity. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Ashley stood up, mascara streaming down her face, and tapped her glass for attention. The room quieted again, curiosity palpable in the air. "I need to say something," she began, her voice shaking. "Candice just gave the most generous speech I could imagine, and I don't deserve it." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was not the usual reception programming. "A year ago at her wedding, I did something unforgivable," Ashley continued. "Out of jealousy and insecurity, I deliberately ruined her ceremony. I announced a fake pregnancy, just to steal attention from her special day." Gasps and whispers erupted from guests who hadn't been at my wedding. Jake squeezed Ashley's hand, encouraging her to continue. "I've spent this past year making excuses, blaming others, and refusing to truly face what I did. And somehow my sister still showed up for me today with nothing but grace. I don't know how to even begin making amends, but I want to try." She turned to face me, tears streaming unchecked down her face. "I am so sorry, Candice. Sorry for your wedding, sorry for the lies, sorry for a lifetime of competition that you never asked for. You deserved better from me. You always have." The tent was completely silent now, 200 people holding their collective breath. "I don't expect forgiveness," Ashley concluded. "But I want you to know that I'm going to get help. Jake and I have already found a therapist. I don't want to be this person anymore." She sat down to stunned silence, followed by a gentle wave of applause. I was frozen in my seat, overwhelmed by a moment I had never expected to experience. Ashley had publicly acknowledged what she had done, had apologized without qualification, had committed to change. It was more than I had ever hoped for. After the speeches concluded and the music resumed, Ashley made her way to my table. Her makeup was ruined, but she didn't seem to care. "Did you mean what you said?" I asked quietly. "Every word," she replied. "I've been terrible to you our whole lives because I was jealous. You seemed so perfect, so together. I wanted to be like you, and when I couldn't, I tried to tear you down instead." "I'm not perfect, Ashley. Far from it. I know that now. And I know that comparing ourselves has only hurt both of us." She hesitated. "I don't expect us to be best friends overnight. But do you think maybe we could start over? Try to build something healthier?" I thought about Dr. Marshall's advice about boundaries, about the home videos showing both the good and bad of our relationship, about the difficult journey of the past year. Not start over, I said finally. We can't erase our history, but we can start from here with honesty and boundaries and a commitment to do better. Ashley nodded, understanding the distinction. I'd like that. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake cutting, and the traditional festivities. As the night wound down, Jake found a moment to speak with me privately. Thank you, he said simply. Whatever you said to her last night after I talked to you, it changed something. This morning before the ceremony, she told me everything. All the lies, the credit card debt, all of it. Said she wanted to start our marriage with complete honesty. I didn't say anything to her, I admitted. This came from inside her. Jake smiled. Then maybe there's hope for us after all. 1 year later, on a sunny Sunday afternoon, Ryan and I invited Ashley and Jake over for brunch. Ashley and I had been slowly rebuilding our relationship, attending therapy sessions together, occasionally establishing healthier patterns of communication, celebrating each other's successes without competition. It wasn't always smooth, but it was genuine progress. After we finished eating, I handed Ashley a small gift box. We have some news, I said, exchanging a smile with Ryan. Ashley opened the box to find a tiny onesie with the words, "Best Aunt Ever" printed on the front. Her eyes widened as she realized what it meant. You're pregnant, she whispered. I nodded, waiting for her reaction with a small nod of anxiety. A year ago, I would have expected jealousy competition or an attempt to steal the spotlight. But the Ashley sitting across from me now was working hard to be different. She set the onesie down carefully and came around the table to hug me. I am so happy for you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. So happy. And I could tell that she meant it. Later, as we cleared the dishes together, Ashley asked, Are you nervous about becoming a mom? Terrified, I admitted, but excited too. She nodded thoughtfully. You're going to be amazing at it. You always knew how to take care of people. She paused, loading a plate into the dishwasher, even when they didn't deserve it. We all deserve care, Ashley, I said. Even when we're at our worst, maybe especially then. That night, after our guests had gone home, Ryan and I sat on our patio watching the sunset. Did you ever imagine a year ago that you and Ashley would be in this place? He asked, his hand resting gently on my still flat stomach. Never, I admitted. I thought that bridge was permanently burned. What changed, do you think? I considered the question carefully. I think we both had to let go of old patterns. I had to stop being the perpetual caretaker who enabled her behavior, and she had to face her issues instead of blaming everyone else. It took courage, Ryan noted. From both of you. He was right. It had taken courage to set boundaries, to speak truth, to remain open to healing without guarantees. And it had taken courage for Ashley to face her flaws, to apologize sincerely, to do the hard work of changing. The journey wasn't over. We would both make mistakes, fall into old habits, occasionally need to course correct. But we had found a path forward that honored both our shared history and our individual needs. Not perfect, but real. Not without conflict, but with a commitment to work through it honestly. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I reflected on the most important lesson I had learned. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in getting even, but in breaking destructive patterns. Sometimes justice comes not through retribution, but through growth and accountability. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when wronged is to stand firmly in your own truth while still leaving the door open for genuine transformation. Have you ever had to find forgiveness for someone who deeply hurt you? What helped you move forward, or what held you back? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about family relationships, healing, and personal growth. And don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear that reconciliation is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening, and remember, our greatest strength often emerges from our most painful challenges.